as you guys all know, Marina, David, and Katie and I are on the steering committee for the Haro Street Community Project, which got a $150,000 watershed stewardship grant. And we are in the process of trying to beautify and shore up the lower Haro median. And so, you know, why are we here today? Well, we have had an amazing amount of geotechnical and all kinds of surveys done. And we want to talk with you guys about what has been discovered about our beautiful little median. We want to talk about how the surveys affect the plan that we've sort of been working off of with all of you up to this point, and what our options are moving forward. And then we want to get your input on what you like or don't like, or what you want to do or don't want to do, and stuff like that. So that's why we're here today, and we're really grateful that you guys came. So thank you. So geotechnical engineering and soil and topographical surveys, they are really complicated looking, and Marina was kind enough to go over them with a magnifying glass today, and essentially wrote up a summary. Now, all of these are available to you guys if you want them. Just shoot us an email and we can send them over. Essentially, with all of the tests that were done, we learned quite a bit about the median, which is that the roadway, the street essentially is anywhere between 15 and 17 feet. So it's not consistent, of course. The slopes, I don't know what that actually means.
I don't know either. I just copied and pasted it.
Okay, well, that's great. So what we do know is that the big erosion issue with our median, this topsoil is only 6 inches to 30 inches deep in places, and underneath that, and most of it is about 1.5 feet. And underneath that is serpentine rock. And I think that's probably why none of us really feel the earthquakes, at least not much. So, you know, we have a pretty sturdy street, right? And so this information is important when we're talking about shoring it up and all of the stuff that we wanted to do. We had to get these surveys done. So essentially, how do the surveys affect our plans? Well, our original plan, as you might recall, was to make, we were pursuing the concept of widening the street on Lower Haro to 21 feet to make it potentially at some point in the future acceptable under certain qualifications of the city. And what we learned in doing this is that if we want to make the street 21 feet wide, we would need to, this is with gabions. The gabions would need to be in most places either 6 feet or 7.5 feet tall in order to be structurally safe at 21 feet of widening the road. And the other aspects, now in the areas where it's yellow, it's only 4.5 feet. So this is what this survey shows. The other component to it was that we would be $178,000 over budget. So needless to say, we were like, oh my God, what? Didn't expect that. So this caused us to have an emergency pivot, and we actually looked into alternative methods of getting street acceptance, of which there are, there are precedents for the Board of Supervisors just blanketly accepting the streets when there's enough pressure put on them from the general public. So to that end, because we are now connected with the Parks Alliance and connected with a lot of other groups that are dealing with similar street problems. I think we've mentioned to you that in the past, there was a massive acceptance of unaccepted streets by the Board of Supervisors, but for some reason they left out District 10, which is our district. I don't know why that was, but as a result, there is a coalition of unaccepted streets developing here in District 10 with the goal of requesting from the Board of Supervisors a massive acceptance. So the other aspect that I just want to point out is that even if Lower Haro was made to be 21 feet wide, Upper Haro will never be able to be made 21 feet wide. And unless we follow through with the original awesome multi-million-dollar plan to drive the road, continue the road all the way through to 24th, the ramp disqualifies us altogether from getting acceptance. So, you know, that way. So we want to get accepted. It's an important part. It's not, how do I say, we got a watershed stewardship grant, and that grant is not about accepting the street. So now that we got the grant, we have to spend it. So we can't stop the project, but we're going to pivot. We're going to continue on. We're going to find an alternative method to get street acceptance that isn't quite as expensive and unobtainable.
Well, and then Lila, let's back up a little. I mean, part of the first part of when we applied for this was to just beautify the hill.
Yeah.
We got this, you know, pie in the sky dream from Scott that, hey, we could do this extra and become an accepted street. Right. So the original journey that we went on is just to try to make, you know, to keep it from eroding and to make it a prettier place. So
it's safety and beautification.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So the emergency pivot, let's look at our options moving forward. So one of them is street width. Okay, we can't hit the 21-foot mark, but wouldn't it be nice to have a consistently wide street that's a little bit more than it is right now, which is between 15 and 17 feet? So we asked Scott from Terrain to give us some options. Like, what if we were to make the street 18 feet? Okay, you know, that would give 3 additional feet in the areas where where it's 15, and 1 additional foot in the area where it's 17. And it would, it would pretty much stop this sort of thing, which is the giant delivery trucks going up on the median and tracking mud everywhere on the street. So as a group, listening to our community, you guys, we really do feel that widening the street is a safety necessity. So we went, we were given options at 17 feet, which wouldn't widen the street at all. But we really feel strongly that that's an important factor. So we went with 18 feet consistently down the street, and this is what we've come up with. So there's an option of a gabion wall, or another option, or the option of combining the two, and this is 18 feet street width with the gabion wall. So the gabion walls over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the yellow area, these are 4.5 feet tall. In the dark yellow, these are 6 feet tall. Now, keeping in mind, 1/2 foot of the gabion is buried. So it's actually only 5.5 feet, not 6 feet. And this would be 4 feet tall, not 4.5 feet. But I'm just, clarifying that structurally, in order to be safe, the surveys have shown us that these, the gabions would need to be this tall, 4.5 feet with 4 feet above ground showing, and 6 feet with 5.5 feet showing, in order for it to be safe and to handle the erosion and the pressure on the hill. And then this tiny little section right here is 3 feet tall. So this is what it would look like. It's at a slight angle. And it would be, as I said, it would be buried about half a foot down under the ground. Then there would be a bioswale. This is how we qualified for the $150,000 grant. The water would drain off the hillside, go down into the bioswale, and follow that all the way to the corner where it would feed a rain garden instead of going into the sewer system, which causes problems for the city. So from this area here to this area, where is it? Here would be 18 feet instead of the 15. So 15 to 17 that it is right now. But that's sort of a cut of what it would look like that way. And this is sort of an artist rendering. This dotted line right here, number 9, is the existing uneven street. And it would be, it would be consistent. There would be a marking here, and then the bioswale would be gravel. Does anybody have any questions before I go on to talk about gabions? Because that's what this is right here. This is a gabion. And we're going to show you more pictures of gabions and talk about them. Anybody have any?
I have a quick question, Paul. I pulled off the road. Is there anything more I need to look at, because I pulled over to do this at this point?
It's all visual, Paul. The whole presentation.
All visual.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll just sit where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
But my question has to do with angle of drainage, because right now the streets become more uneven, and I have a 40-year memory of what it's been like.
Yeah.
August made it 40 years that I've lived at 1344. So what I can remember is when the street was new, because Fleming had to pave this block and underground the utilities on our side. The median was not quite as sloppy wide as it is now. And also the water drained to the north and the south, literally from where Katie and Jonathan's place is, and me and Kent, right on that border.
Yeah.
So the water would go north, the water would go south from there. And now it does not. There's different places where the pavement has sunk in,
Right.
kind of like the middle of our roof.
Yeah.
It's a little lower than it should be. So
Right.
what is part of the plan? And I'll let you continue. And I just want to know that we're making sure that the drainage is going to work.
Right.
On this.
Well, that was one of the expensive surveys that we all did, which was to figure that aspect out as well. And the architectural team is definitely on that. And the goal ultimately would be to have the water drain here along the hillside directly to the rain garden. But there's probably going to be, when it's really pouring the way that we've had the rains lately, it's going to probably also, spill over and follow the gutter and go into the storm drain. But as far as like pooling right around here, like what we're seeing right now, that won't be happening, because the bioswale would direct the water to the rain garden. That's the whole point of the environmentally friendly watershed stewardship grant.
An artist drawing.
Rendering, yeah.
All right. Is that a good answer? I mean, Paul, did that kind of touch on what you were asking?
Yes. Where's this rain garden going to be?
At the corner of 25th and Haro, and I'll show you that picture again. Actually, I can just go up. It's this right here.
Oh.
That's the idea. We have this 12-inch bioswale. Water will drain from Upper Haro onto the hillside and down into through the gabions, or the alternative, and down into the bioswale where the majority of it will be directed to the rain garden at the corner. Here's the big tree. And then if there's overflow, which there shouldn't be because it goes down. We did percolation tests, and the bioswale, the whole point of it is that it's layered so that it's a permeable surface and the water goes down into it. There is a pipe that also directs water directly to the corner. But if there is overflow, because we're having such overwhelming water lately, like, with these monsoons, then it would probably spill over the bioswale and go to the other corner and then into the storm drain. So.
What is the rain garden exactly? Are there plants there, or is it?
Yeah. It's sort of a lower area in, you see them all over town actually right now. It's the newest thing. There are these water collection gardens with plants in them. And the purpose is to give another use to the water instead of it going down into the sewer and overflowing the storm drains in the city. It helps the city and it's environmentally friendly. It's, a new way of managing rainwater using green architecture. So
This doesn't look so bad.
So, let's see, where were we? So this was one option. There's another option that our architects brought.
No, this is actually the original, with the 15 feet. Oh, no, it's 18 feet. Never mind.
So this is the rendering with the gabions. And the bioswale and the widening of the road to a consistent 18 feet. The other option that we have is using a new product that's actually being used in Canada and other places. It hasn't fully established itself in California yet, but it is something called the Flex MSC wall. Essentially, it's a plantable wall, and we're going to show you examples of it a little later. The reason that our architecture brought it to us is because we had expressed concern about the height of the gabions. So they had found these alternatives. So instead of, instead of 4.5 feet gabion, like in the yellow areas, it would be 4 feet of flex wall, which is a plantable wall. And then in these orange areas, it would be 5.5 feet of plantable wall. So this is what that looks like. Again, there are these plantable bags that stack on top of each other, and it's just at a slight angle. Then you have the bioswale right here. Then you have this little curb, and then this is where the concrete, the road widening, and we're going to have to re-asphalt that. So this would be a total of 18 feet from curb to the end of the bioswale. And this is what it looks like at first. They're bags, they get stacked on top of each other. The reason that they're green is because they get hydro sprayed with seeds that then grow. And once they grow, they can look like this. They're supposedly stronger than concrete. If they grow successfully with vegetation, they can last like 75 years. And they're used on freeways for erosion control and other places, both city projects and also private projects. So that's, there is a price difference between them. And this is what we're coming to you guys about. It's the aesthetic of the street, it's the price, it's all of it. If we do in both situations, we need water, and we're going to have to do it in stages because we're over budget on both options if we do the entire lower to Haro in one go, which is annoying, but it is what it is. With the gabion walls, we're 89,000 over budget. And with the Flex MSC walls, we're 35,000 over budget. So the bags are, that Flex MSC bags are cheaper than the Gabions, but they, you know, each choice has its own set of issues. So,
Lila, are you gonna address the what goes into each one to do that, like the gabion, all the excavation that has to take place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's excavation in both cases. There's more excavation. Ooh, sorry, a spider just lowered itself off my webcam. You guys missed it. Anyways, sorry. There's more excavation with the gabions than there is with the bags, because the gabions, in order to be structurally sound, you have to dig out the hillside a little bit more. I think it's 18 inches. Whereas with the bags, I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's maybe only 12 inches, something like that. It's actually probably on here. Yeah. But I can't read that. Anyways, you can see the difference in excavation. These are clearly, this is 18 inches and this is 1 foot 3 inch. So it's 15 inches. Okay. So, which is also part of the price, and part of the reason that the gabions are more than the bags is because we're excavating into serpentine. Okay. So what our architecture company came up with is, as a bid alternative, we'll do as much as we can up to a certain point, and then we'll ask for you know, how we'll see like how much can we get done with the budget that we have. We may have to kind of like, I'm thinking probably we won't get, you know, like, oops, sorry, wait, this section here might not happen, you know, but we'll be able to, we have to do the rain garden because it's part of the grant that we got. So we're going to move from 25th into Haro up as far as we can with the money that we have. And then we'll just continue it with the next grant cycle. So that's what the architecture team came up with as a solution to that financial problem. So any questions up to this point?
So basically the slide you just showed us shows this first phase you're talking about, going just past Katie's house, Katie and Jonathan's house.
We don't really know where the money is going to carry us. It's at least halfway up the street.
Yeah, it depends on which, it also depends on which one we go with, right? Because the gabion is more expensive, so it won't go as far as the Flex.
Right. So the, yeah, and we don't really know. I mean, there's like a supply chain issue. Everything that we had, you know, when we were doing the grant, everything that we asked for pricing on is like twice as expensive now. And that's partly why this is looking the way that it is. So we don't know what the future holds, but we're going to do the best we can with what we have. And we will get it done. We just might have to get it done in stages. So
Yeah. Well, a couple of questions. Difference in maintenance between the two options.
yeah, we're going to talk about all of that in the next section.
Okay.
So keep asking questions. I'll let you know if that's going to be addressed. What are your other questions?
All right. I'm
Any
going to
other
get back
questions?
on the road.
Okay. We're going
I'll
to
just
talk
pay
now
attention.
about gabion and Flex MSC. So gabion is essentially, it's a wire cage filled with some kind of rock. Usually the rock choice is chosen for aesthetic purposes. I don't know if any of you guys go to the medical offices at 450 Rhode Island, but it's a wonderful example of a decorative gabion wall, because what they did was they put the entire first floor wall is a cage of metal filled with giant chunks of glass, broken glass, like beach glass, and it's pretty cool. So if you have a chance, 450 Rhode Island, it's an interesting example of gabions, and in, you know, there are really beautiful gabions and there are not so beautiful gabions. So that's an example of a really beautiful gabion. And again, you know, keeping price in consideration, you know, we're going to do the best we can, but this is what they look like. They're cages. They're sold in baskets that are 18 inches by, I think, I don't remember, and I'm not seeing it here, but I think one basket is 18 inches by 3 feet, if I remember from the presentation properly. And then they're wired together. So the pros of gabions are that they have a very distinctive look. They're minimalist and pretty modern.
Hey, Paul, can you mute? We're getting a lot of background noise. Sorry.
Sure.
I can also mute, sorry. So
I was muted. I was muted.
Okay.
thank you, Paul. So here's an example. I think that's rosemary, but I'm not sure. But the rosemary is planted behind the wall and it's growing over the wall. That's, you know, that's pretty nice. And here's some other examples where they've actually incorporated some kind of a clematis vine into the wall itself, which is kind of interesting. They may appear harsh and austere, but they are surprisingly versatile and blend seamlessly into any style of garden. Here's an example of another gabion. This is a stepped gabion. Again, an example of a gabion wall with a curve. Although in our situation, we probably wouldn't be doing much of a curve since we're trying to keep the street uniformly 18 feet. But it has the plants over it. Here's an interesting example because it said online that gabion walls become stronger when debris, sand, and other organic matter are allowed to collect within the spaces between the rocks because it kind of concretizes it. And in this example, it looks like they actually have plants growing in the wall itself. I don't know how well that works, but it's kind of cool. It would be an interesting experiment. And you can also incorporate plantings on top of the wall. I thought that was an interesting picture. So the cons to gabions. If not maintained, they can look like crap. But again, we're not going to use chicken wire. We're not going to let the weeds grow too much over it if we can control that. Animals, nooks and crannies in the gabion walls make an appealing nesting site for all sorts of burrowing creatures. This can be a positive if you enjoy sharing your space with local wildlife like me, but not everyone is looking to invite a new neighbor into their yard. So that's it. That's one of the things it said online about the negatives to gabions, to some people. The one that does concern me is that they are a graffitiable surface. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. And because we do live in San Francisco, it's a wall. What would be, how do we deal with that? What are the repercussions financially if somebody tags our frickin' wall? Do we live with it? Do we leave it there? You know, these are the questions. They are, let's see, gabions are more expensive than either vegetated slopes or riprap, which I think what they're doing is they're referring to the plantable erosion control measures. The wire baskets used for gabions may be subject to heavy wear and tear. They're difficult to install, requiring large equipment, and difficult and expensive to repair when damaged. But, you know, I believe what Scott said that if it's a car versus a gabion, the gabion wins.
Right.
So, all right. So the alternative that Terrain Studios brought to us was the Flex MSC vegetated wall system. It uses the same globally accepted principles of the mechanically stabilized earth that builders rely on for making massive retaining walls. The geobags have been built as high as 75 feet with great success. The interlocking plate is 100% recyclable, which adds increased geogrid compatibility and friction strength over its precursors. In other words, it's better than the previous bags. Flex MSE is a unique soft building material that exhibits hard material qualities. It weathers events that would ruin other systems and only gets stronger and greener as time goes on. So they say that it's like concrete once it's been established. So this is what it looks like when it's, and so essentially it's one of these bags that's 30 inches by 12 inches by 5.5 inches high, and they lay on top of each other. It looks like a sandbag, but instead of being filled with sand, it's filled with very rich compost and soil. So they use these interlocking plates to secure them in place to keep them from moving, and in that way they become erosion control. They only cost $10.43 a bag, which is I guess for the same amount of space. Somehow it's cheaper than the gabions.
Well, and also we talked to the gentleman, he presented to us from Flex,
right,
and he's going to work through our landscape architect, because this would be a prime example of us using this in the city when the city hasn't used it very much, but they have a project in Sacramento. So we're trying to get them to maybe come down in pricing, just
right,
to because we'd be a pilot program for them.
yes, that is a possibility, which is kind of exciting. So it can be installed horizontally or at a slope. It's able to withstand well, you can read this stuff. It's easier to install than gabions. You have 2 different vegetation options, or you can utilize both options. Direct planting in the bag of plants, or hydro seeding. And I'm like, what the heck is hydro seeding, right? I went down that rabbit hole on the internet of, you know, hydro seeding, and what it is essentially is there's this pre-mixed liquid that includes seeds of certain types of plants, because not all seeds can be hydro seeded, and they're sprayed on the bag with some kind of a natural adhesive, and then over the course of the next 3 months they grow. And they use grass a lot as an example of hydro seeding. But as we all pointed out, we're in California. It's supposedly in a drought, you know, with the exception of the last month. And you know, people are moving away from grassy lawns. So I did some research, and you can actually and you can plant succulents directly, or ferns, or other, I think this is other plants. But hydro seeding, you don't have to just hydro seed grass, which I was really excited about. There's commonly wildflowers, daisies. These are alyssums, which are like wildflowers. Anyways, you can choose different things to be hydro seeded. And that was a relief to me when we were going through it, because I was thinking, what, we're going to have grass that's going to turn brown and it's going to be ugly.
We spent how many years getting rid of the grass?
But we also need to make sure that any of these seeds are actually drought resistant.
That's right. Drought
Because
resistant.
These are
perennial.
not really drought resistant.
Well,
Yeah.
and then in
So-
addition to that, I mean, Lila, are we going to touch on the meter grant that
Oh
we're
yeah,
applying for?
absolutely. And actually that's, so in order for this system to work, well, let me say, in order for anything we do on the hillside to work, we have to get irrigation, and that's a whole separate grant that we're looking into. And we're feeling pretty confident that we're going to be able to achieve that. But the difference between the gabion walls and these flex walls are that we would need to install irrigation, you know, directly in as part of the wall to be able to feed the plants. Whereas with the gabion, it's just stone, it's not a living wall, so it doesn't need to be watered. In the same way, you would want to, we would use irrigation, of course, to keep the plants above the wall moist and watered. So that's one of the differences. So here's just a few examples of this particular, you know, type. And this, of course, is in a shaded area. This is what it looks like right after installation. They've planted in the ferns, and then over the course of, I guess, I don't know how long, probably the next 6 months to a year, it grew out. And then it looks pretty natural. You don't even see the wall. This is another example, although it was a terrible photo. I thought I changed that, sorry. So the pros, this is a big pro. It's 21 LEED credits, which means it's a green building certification. San Francisco is going to be all over excited on this. But what does that really mean to us? I don't know. But it's exciting to be green and use the
But
product.
that actually can be put out there as we're LEED certified.
Right,
And
it
then-
does help us with grant
right.
writing. That's
And
true.
it helps us in writing the next grant to get the next round.
We may actually be able to get additional grants because it's a LEED credit project. So another pro is it's a living wall instead of a not living wall. But there are some cons. What happens if they don't get watered? What happens if they're not maintained? And what does that mean? Essentially, that means watered. Because if you can't get things to grow in them, if they stay in this state with nothing growing in them, they actually degrade because of the sun blasting them. So it's really important. It's like it's a non-starter. We have to make sure that we have them thoroughly planted if we use this system so that it's you know, strong enough to do what it needs to do. And then we don't have to look at the bags, right? I mean, it's sort of like it's part of the process is that it has to grow the plants.
But it's also that we need to maintain the plants because not all plants, even if they're irrigated, grow. Sometimes they die off, you know, and it's not given that we're going to have a full green wall.
Right. Let's see. If not hydro-seeded, it will take longer for the plants to grow to cover the bags, so the bags will be visible longer. That's a negative. And Marina collected up these photos. Like this is a good example of the wall, like what it might look like if it isn't maintained properly. So that's the negatives to it. And then the thought of what about a synthesis of gabion and flex wall, you know? So I don't know. I think there are pros and cons to both systems. And at this point, we're really interested in hearing what you guys think about it.
Let me offer a couple questions then, I guess, not knowing much about either of them, of the two options. Based upon all the work that you all have done in terms of eliminating weeds and grass and all this other stuff, it seems a little weird to me that we would be considering something that would require growing. And what's to mitigate the weeds and everything from being what takes over the bags? And it just seems like a lot of maintenance in order to maintain those to get it to the level that we would want. Would be pretty. I certainly like the appearance of the walls, the bag walls that have flourished, but with our environment and going into drought conditions again, which I'm sure we will, and I understand the need for the irrigation, but who pays for the water?
We can answer that.
Okay.
So the water is a grant to install a water meter. And because the water doesn't go down into the sewer system the way that our water does, it's vastly cheaper to water a park than it is to water somebody's house. So for us to stand in front of our house and water the median, it's like it costs what, $70 to just do our little area. Whereas with this water meter, it would cost maybe $70 a month or less, you know, to cover the entire median. So we've done a lot of research about that with the city. And we don't really feel that that's an intimidating step. And I want to just say that a large part of our community group is about community planting together. So I think that planting and growing has always been part of our mission because it grows community. And
right. And then, and there's always going to be maintenance no matter what is there. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be maintenance and it's, you know, as a community, you know, those community days are really important when we get 10, 15 people out there. You know, the hill is not, there's no such thing as a maintenance-free hill. So that's never going to happen.
It's not, but that's also that I feel the gabion walls are visually more attractive, they add some modern touch. And they will overgrow over time. You know, we'll have climbing vines come down the gabion wall, and it'll be much greener, but it will be, we still don't have an irrigation system that we need to install on top of the gabion, whereas we need to install an irrigation system on top of the bags.
Well, we're going to need an irrigation regardless of either way that we go, because we can't continue to water the hill. It's just too expensive.
It's not cost effective after learning that it's, you know, it's like, because I know like 4 or 5 people water the hillside regularly, myself not included because I don't have a hose that fits. But those people are spending a huge amount of money on personal water. And when we found out that the cost is different, it seemed so frustrating. So that's definitely something that we have to do. I mean, this is.
So let me just ask though. So we put a water system in.
Yeah.
So then there's an assessment for all the properties along.
No, it's public land. I mean, it's PUC land.
So who pays for the water?
Oh, the community group does. So that would be us, which is why we fundraise. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So there would have to be funds provided from the residents or whatever to pay for the water.
Or we would apply for grants. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's pretty minimal.
It's a lot less than.
Yeah. It's less than your water bill or my water bill.
Oh, I'm sure. Question on the gabion wall. The trucks are going to hit it. You can almost guarantee that. With the wire front on it, is it sustainable? Is it repairable?
It's tricky to repair.
Yeah, it's expensive to repair.
Yeah.
It's the only saving grace is there's going to be a curb between the bioswale and anything that's on the other side of it. So.
Oh, okay. I did not see that on the plan.
Let me go back to show you that. I'm going to share my screen again, move my, I put up a document to take notes. Let's see. Where is it? Yeah, let me go over that,
You want some water?
Yeah, that'd be great.
okay, we're almost there. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I use the gabion or the bag thing, it's the same either way. Essentially, they put in this concrete divider, which is the same level as the street. And then this is a 12-inch ditch with gravel in it.
Right.
So if the trucks drive on the gravel, you know, it's gonna feel different and feel weird.
Oh, thank you.
So let me go actually up to the gabion example. So, I mean, you know, it's a concern that we all have, Bill.
Oh,
We're kind of whistling in the dark, I think, to some extent.
I would add with a wider street, you're gonna have cars that will drive faster, which gives me a huge concern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's another factor. that we wanna
Colliding with, yeah, and then
speed
potential
bumps.
colliding. Well, yeah, but that's a whole other thing. So
It is, yeah.
well, would there be an option to raise the yellow, whatever is concrete
Yeah.
thing, and make that into an actual curb to keep vehicles away from the wall, whichever wall?
Yeah, I also thought that that would be a good solution to that. And what the architecture firm says is what's going to happen is that it's going to get broken right away. So there would be like, so at the possible cost of a potential maybe hitting of the gabion versus a definite cost of the curb getting hit and broken. So I don't know. I mean, that was something I thought too.
The curb would be hit, there's no question.
Yeah, but it's a curb, right? I mean, it's
exactly, and I mean the curbs on the other side. I'm not aware that they've been negatively impacted by, but they mostly have cars parked there. I
Yeah,
guess.
they're not really hit. But the other thing, we could put spikes in it would be great.
Yeah.
oh my God. I don't know that that's legal, but yeah, that would be funny. Oh, so I mean, these are why we're bringing this to you, because we have these questions. So,
Lila, I know you had one slide, but you know, Bill, you were concerned about collision and bent metal.
Mhm,
Rust is another concern of mine.
mhm.
You know, like what does it look like when it's been raining like this? And then the other piece is it's a natural art piece for taggers. Like it's a vertical space. And then what? That's my concern. I know you had one slide that showed tagging, but you know, it's real. Yeah. And then how do we remove, when you have a wall, how do you remove?
yeah.
Each individual stone would have paint on it, and then what?
And then to get to that stone.
Well, I would assume that it would
try to
be
get to it.
hiring a graffiti removal company to take care of it, or learning how to do that ourselves, which I don't really see that.
Or you turn it into a mural.
Well, yeah. It is a concern because we are in San Francisco. Oh, but
And then personally, I mean, this is just I don't find it aesthetically pleasing. I find it very wall-like.
well, part of
So
why
that's
we are
my personal opinion.
part of why we've come to you is because as a steering committee, we don't necessarily see things the same way. And that's why we wanted to come to the community and get input and, you know, bring it onto the table so we can talk this out and figure it out. So.
I guess part of my concern, certainly the cost, but the concept of only doing half of it and then hoping to raise additional funds to do the rest of it
No, it would be a given. It would be a grant from the watershed stewardship again.
Oh,
Well,
It would-
and then let's back up a little. So we're short, 58,000. Let's say we get another grant for 150,000. What we could do if we did the flex MSE is actually do more of that up the hill, especially in front of your house and my house, Bill,
yeah.
and get rid of those wood things that are in there and build up that flex MSE wall there, instead of putting gabion in. Part of the problem we were told by the landscape architect is trying to put this gabion in, and the excavation that has to go in the hill. It's costly to try to dig into the hill and then get it and go down. The further up you go, so the flex MSE would give us the ability to terrace the hill a little bit better, where it's super steep in front of our houses. And it would, in that next grant cycle, we could complete this project and move on.
So let's see.
Have you approached them about the feasibility of getting another grant?
We have spoken with the watershed stewardship grant, and it's a pretty common thing for projects to require more
Okay.
than one grant to be completed. So we're not
Yeah.
we're not super concerned about that.
Yeah, we've met with other community groups who are on their third and fourth cycle of grants.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not, it's very plausible to get this.
I'm
this-
going to ask a different question than the ones you're concerned about now, but realizing that trying to do anything on Upper Haro is probably pretty minimal at this point. But one of the concerns I continue to have are the erosion of the upper road,
Right.
and having another vehicle come down the hill.
And that's something that in any grant process that we try to get, that's an infrastructure type of thing, and that's not towards watershed stewardship or any other
Right.
grant we can get. That's something the city needs to address, or the owners of Upper Haro need to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've tried that tact with Shimon Walton, the supervisor, who came out and looked at the site, and the head of DPW, and they all agree that that's a problem, but finding funding to try to solve these problems has been truly a challenge.
Right. The only thing that we could do is either whichever one we choose is try to put something more towards the top.
Yeah.
To stop that from eroding any further.
And in our image, which I think is up on the screen,
Mhm.
we did that at.
I saw that.
Action. This is actually to keep the erosion from continuing and to prevent things from continuing to fall down, whether it's a car or a garbage can or whatever. And that's certainly, depending on which we use, I guess I'm not sure which of the two options would be better as a retention and erosion control in this situation, but maybe the bags actually might be more suited for this kind of retention, because that's exactly what they're used for. They're used for erosion control. But in the gabion too would be good because it creates a curb, right?
Right.
So either way, I mean, the original plan was definitely to do stuff up top as well, and also create terracing so that we can enjoy planting on the hillside, because that was part of our original goal.
So, and that will be addressed, I think, more in phase 2, the second round of the grant.
Yeah, we're just dealing with this lower section, shoring it up, widening the street, and then doing what they need us to do in order to get that money, which is create the bioswale and the green garden. So.
Well, okay, again, I'm going to go back to sort of a tangent, but there was mention made of the settlement or changes that have happened in the pavement. And I'm realizing that's not a part of this proposal. but it clearly is going to be a continuing concern, and the property owners are responsible for that. Unfortunately. And if we're not going to be able to get the city to take it over because we can't do the 21 feet, then I'm concerned about future additional costs
Right.
that we're going to have to accept.
Well, so Bill, I mean, part of the problem is the upper to Haro, there's a whole set of problems up there. There's no sidewalk. The street isn't wide enough. There's so many setbacks to get it to be accepted that, and I doubt the people who live on Upper Haro want to pay to put a sidewalk in and do all this extra work to become accepted. The only way we could do it is how Lila brought it up at the beginning, is to, get, through the supervisors for them to do another sweep through District 10 or a sweep in District 10 and just automatically make our street accepted. It's kind of the only way to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coalition of unaccepted streets in District 10 is pretty much the way to go for getting accepted. We're not giving up on getting accepted, Bill. We promise. We're just not able to do that through widening the street.
Got it.
Could I say something? Lila, you mentioned a couple of times that the walls have to be such and such a height, 6 foot, 7 foot, for safety reasons.
Right.
Well, my comment is that that hillside has been there for what, 40 years? I don't know. And it's there right now. And there's a little erosion. And I think the curb and the garden thing will help with that. Why is it that there has to be a wall? What if there was just the curb and the drainage ditch, and then we just continue to water and plant? Because it's all serpentine.
Right.
Well,
but if you notice when
oh.
it rains, that soil comes off that serpentine and comes down.
Right. Without some kind of erosion control, the anything that we do there is just going to get covered over with mud and driven over. So,
Well, it's not covered. It's not covered in mud right now.
it is, I think. And I actually have a photo of it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not understanding what you're suggesting, because this is what it looks like right now. And this is actually part of the hillside that the trucks drive over in order to get through the street.
Mm-hmm.
So you're suggesting that we put in the bioswale.
If you put it in the bioswale, widen the street, put it in bioswale. And then if you stopped there, what would happen? What is the safety issue?
Well, in order to widen the street and put in the bioswale, we have to cut into the hillside. So we actually have to excavate along the hillside to make it a consistent 18 feet.
Right.
So we can't just cut it and have like 2 feet of cut soil and then not put something there to keep it from falling.
So Gary, if you ever go out in water, like when I go out in water, as soon as I, put the hose on stuff, rocks just start tumbling down. So and the soil starts, dripping down. So, there is an erosion. We might not see it through all these years, but there's erosion happening with the hillside. It's pieces and pieces coming down, and large rocks will fall down if I'm out there watering. There's erosion.
Okay.
It would simplify things, but it's like, it just isn't safe.
How wide does this street have to be a street? 21?
To be accepted, 21.
21.
Yes.
And we're what, 17?
Between 15 and 17.
But even if we made it 21 feet, we still wouldn't become an accepted street because of Upper Haro. They won't disconnect Upper and Lower Haro from each other. That was the frustrating outcome of all of our work with the Board of Supervisors and DPW. So
Yeah.
it's a moot point. It's what we've learned, and that's why we did this massive pivot. It made it less painful when we saw the incredible over budget aspect of doing it. But we recognized that for safety purposes, it's a really important thing to do. At the end of the day, we really do want a safer street that doesn't have trucks driving on the hillside and, you know. So what do you guys think?
I mean, if we don't, should we send out a survey to get people's feedback like this so people don't
That's a
feel
thought. Yeah. And we
under
can do it
pressure to?
anonymously.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't feel under pressure, but I don't know that I have an ability to make a decision. I mean, my key thing is to get something done.
Yeah.
And if money is the issue, then going for the least expensive in order to get it implemented makes sense. Now, if you're comfortable with getting another grant, then maybe that mitigates it, and that's not the big concern.
Well, even with another grant, so we're 88 in the hole. If we want to do any additional things with that grant, that's only going to leave us with 60 some thousand to do the upper part of the hill. So we're not going to get.
Well, we're not
Right,
doing
in the
the upper
water.
part of the hill at this point.
And with the next
what
grant,
you're talking about,
what I'm saying, if you'd let me finish, is for the next part, the next grant cycle, we would be, our delta is 88,000, almost 90,000 in the hill. So into the hole. So we couldn't really use very much money to get the upper part done that we also want to get done.
yeah,
Right,
well,
it would
get
take
another
two
grant.
It takes 2 grant cycles to get it done with gabions.
Yeah.
Right. Is
Right.
the water system included in these
No.
budget numbers? Okay, so that's already.
That's a whole other, we can get that without a fee or anything. We can just get that. There's no, it's a grant. And they'll
That's
give
a
they'll give
rebate
us
grant.
yeah, that's just a
Okay.
unique grant. But what I'm trying, my point is I'm trying to make is, so we get the other grant for 150,000. Yes, we'll finish the lower part, but there's not much money left over to continue the part in front of our house bill to try to put in more walls, to keep that where we just have wood slats put in. So there's less money to use in the next grant cycle to finish up shoring up the hill the way we want to.
Yeah.
So the shoring up Upper Haro would have to be a 3rd grant if we're still alive.
I have a question about the sections of the wall that are it looks like natural rock. Is that what that is? It's just they did the survey and they realized that there's just giant boulders there, or?
Yeah, we have a lot of beautiful outcroppings of natural rock on our median, and we would like to keep them. They're not sliding. They are, pretty firm. And the idea was, because we're going to have to dig back into the slope, we'll be exposing more of them and we can utilize them aesthetically on the hillside. And so that's why in both of these images, there are these outcroppings. They should have made them greenish because they're serpentine, and serpentine is like a green turquoise color, green gray turquoise. But for some reason they're red, but this is just an artist render, so.
And did you say, so the costs that you have on here, that was for the 190,000, that's for the cost to do the whole street? And the 136,000 is to do the whole street too, or is that just the half of the street?
Yeah, this is the whole street, yes.
Okay.
So it would cost 190,000 to do it with gabions and 136,000 to do it with the bags. So.
I would think this would be a lot more maintenance.
Mhm.
I've seen this throughout the city.
Mhm.
It didn't seem as intrusive at all.
Mhm.
Which throughout the city. Ken,
What was that, Kent?
Oh, I was just saying that the upper picture,
the-
I've seen that out throughout the city, walls like that.
Yeah,
And
Gabby
they
on
didn't-
walls.
Yeah, and they didn't seem obtrusive at all. I would think that the bottom one would be an awful lot more maintenance.
Yeah. Paul, you've been awfully silent. I know you're driving. Do you want to express an opinion?
actually, I just pulled into the garage.
Oh, cool.
If I hadn't stopped and looked at everything, I would have already been home. And
Yeah.
whatever you do, don't tell my cat that I'm home.
Okay.
So it's dinner time. I have a problem with the graffiti aspect of the Gabion. Quite frankly, if you just go down to Vermont between 26th and Chavez, you're going to see the constant battle that the people that have that property that used to be a beer distribution. I think it's a Homeland Security
Oh, yeah.
agency there, but
Right.
there's that outer wall that faces Vermont Street. It's a constant back and forth of painting it over and getting it graffitied again and then painted over, and then the colors change. And this is an endemic problem throughout the city right now in terms of graffiti. They having a conversation with one of them was fascinating. Really didn't care that his graffiti gets painted over, because that's part of the point, he said. Is that they want to be a nuisance. Some people just want to be a nuisance, and it would be a very inviting target. It would be aesthetically pleasing for I don't know how long, but I wouldn't say it would not change. And then my other question about the flex is, it sounds really very native in terms of its bio aspects, but then is it good food for gophers?
I know that was something I asked too.
Well, what's the answer to that? Will gophers eat through it?
I
Eat
don't
through the
know.
bags?
They didn't know.
Oh boy.
I know. It was that was one of my first questions as well. So
I like that it can be a slope, but my other concern is that nothing in this is going to mitigate the crossover on the hill,
yeah,
and none of this is going to go back to the pre-World War II plan of extending the upper part of Haro, dropping it down between 24th and 23rd.
Right.
But what this leaves us with is that's still going to be there, and because the city decided, through whoever encouraged them, to make part of our side of the street, the lower Haro, one way, the amount of traffic that goes across that part of the street is, if you walk on that part, it's falling apart, and it's only a matter of time. We don't know what's underneath it. There are sinkholes opening all over the place.
Yep.
That we do know we're on a solid rock. Basically, it's a mile deep of serpentine rock on Potrero Hill. It's one massive rock, and we have a little bit of topsoil, which makes me, worry about how much of that, because someone put that in a long time ago, how much of that is going to stay there. And then what happens? And so none of this is going to mitigate that at all.
No, it's not. And when the projects are done being built, there's going to be 7,000 more families living on the hillside right here and driving on our streets. So I totally hear you. We need to figure out how we can get accepted so that they take responsibility, because the ramp is not safe. I mean, that is absolutely still true. And this doesn't touch that at all, because all we can do is get community challenge grants, which are for prettifying, beautification. You know, this at least, the watershed stewardship grant at least deals with some environmental aspects of the dangers on the hillside. So we're able to get this grant to shore up the slide on this part of the median because of the watershed stewardship. But there are no grants that deal with, that we've been able to find anyways, that deal with community groups trying to solve infrastructure problems, because that's an infrastructure problem and we've hit so many dead ends on that. Any thoughts that you might have, we would totally be down for, you know, continuing to brainstorm on it. It's just, you know,
Well-
the first 3 years of this whole process was revolving around that, and we came out of it pretty discouraged.
Well, for one thing, I just want to thank the committee. You guys have done a lot of work on this, and it's really appreciated. And plus all the gardening that's been done. I'm not as agile as I like to be, so I'm not up there doing as much. I kind of redug my ditch the other day, and as far as a curb or a wall that's going to be more expensive to repair, my big concern about that is even the current amount of traffic, because even though I was only out there digging the drainage back a little bit so it keeps going downhill, I was only out there for a little bit, and 2 different Uber Lyft drivers came down the street, and they were both looking at their app and wavering back and forth as they drove down our block.
Yeah.
Because and that's a major problem. The woman was struck and killed at the corner of 16th and Valencia, and it's just like there's just so many of these drivers who have no idea where they're going, and drive really erratically. And I've seen a couple of them scrape the bottom of their car trying to make that, you know, one way begins here turn off of the ramp.
Right.
And because some numbnuts put the sign up and decided to go with this idea that it's a one-way street, which I can testify that never since 1982 had it ever been designated a one-way street, had anybody ever done anything, which is a process involved. But Mohammed Nehru will probably go to jail at some point for other things he did for Department of Public Works under the table. So however that one-way street got done, it got done without due process.
Yes,
Be
and
that
we
as-
asked them, you know, look, this is totally unfair. This is not appropriate. We weren't notified. This was never a one-way street. How do we reverse this ridiculous thing? And they said that the only way to do it would negate all the parking on Lower to Haro. It would take away all the parking spots. And
I'm aware of that, yeah. So
Yeah.
so it's a non-starter in that direction. But I'm thinking that whatever we do exponentially, a problem that crops up is going to be more expensive than we think it is. It's the Murphy's Law.
Right.
It's always cost overruns. And I'm worried that this project, if we go too far into the idea that we can do the gabion and manage it, I'm concerned that less is more in this, and if we go with the more slow ability to slope the thing, we'd be better off, as long as we're doing the drainage in the garden, and that's what this grant's about.
Right.
But the less structure you build, the less it's going to be expensive to maintain, and it never looks right. Once graffiti starts, you never get the colors right.
It's true.
And then you have to keep, who buys the paint to cover up the paint, and
Right.
so
If we went with the gabions, we would have to have some funding for graffiti removal services or something to make sure that we had that, you know, in our pocket when we will need it. So.
okay.
In the case of the gabion, if they would use a sandblaster to remove it, because they wouldn't use paint, I can't imagine.
The problem with sandblasting the gabion is that when you break up the rocks that are inside the gabion, you reduce its structural integrity. And that's actually
Sandblasting
part
would break the rock.
Well, sandblasting, yeah. It would remove the sand and dirt in between the rocks as well as, so, I mean, I looked into that too. I was thinking about that. So I don't know. But I would worry about reducing the structure, that because it's you know, what we're talking about, yes, it's only 6 inches to 30 inches of topsoil, but that when it's thoroughly saturated with water, that's a lot of pressure on that wall, and we don't want the wall to just fall over, because that's very, you know, that's a safety issue right there, whether it's the bags or the gabions. So and as far as the bags and gophers, I would be surprised if the gopher would dig through the bag because of what it's made from.
And once it hardens up, it's going to be pretty hard for them to dig anything.
Yeah, it hardens to be like concrete. That's what we were told. So,
But
you know,
how long does that process take? It's probably going to be several
that's
years.
a really
Years.
good question. How long does that process take?
Because
That's
the golfers are going to be there as soon as they
Now.
find it.
yeah. That's right.
You want to make sure that you know, it doesn't harden up that fast, because if you want plants to grow in there and dig their roots in there, then you know, you want to make sure it's not concrete.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think it ever turns into concrete. I think it
Well,
just
that-
has the
They said it was
stability of
the
concrete.
strength of concrete.
Strength
yeah.
of concrete. It never turns into concrete.
Right.
Yeah, how would you plant things in it if it became,
Right.
is the idea that you do a lot of work in the beginning to stick plants in the bags and then hope that it takes over, and then you don't really, or is it going to be an annual replanting thing?
I think it's a one-time deal as long as the bags are maintained. And,
Yeah.
you know, like here's an example again.
With just succulents all in there.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too.
And you know, if we did decide to go with the bag idea, I think doing a combination of hydro seeding and direct planting would be what I would opt for.
Yeah. And I love the idea of the rosemary climbing over it. And that really grows.
Yeah, I like that idea over the gabion or the bags. I think that would be really good. But yeah, Aaron, it's a matter of cutting a little tiny hole and sticking a plant in there. And then just make, you know, one thing that's really nice is that with the installation comes 90 days of watering from the company. So depending on when we finish this project, we would have 90 days of watering from the company. They'd bring a water truck and spray everything for 3 months.
Or put in a temporary meter.
Yeah.
We need to provide a meter for them.
Well, a water truck or meter. I mean, they'd come in, they'd make sure it's watered. It's part of the thing.
Yeah.
Part of the contract.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So that answers your question about the digging. I mean, potentially, Aaron, I think you're right. I think every year we would want to do a reassessment and replace plants that didn't make it in the bags. You know, it's just part of the maintenance thing, which is sort of what our organization is about. We want to plant together, right? So that would be, instead of removing the overgrowth of, what is it that we cut out all the time, yucca plants or whatever, we would be replanting in the wall as part of our maintenance. So
And so sorry if you said this already, but what else is involved in the maintenance beside, like, do you have to clean the bags, or is it just a matter of like clearing out weeds and just touching, or is there something else with the actual that you have to do to the material?
And I don't think, you know, it's a good question, but I also don't think weeds are going to grow out of the bags. It's sort of what you plant, whatever we microseed it with. I don't think it's just automatically, where's it going to find the growth for a weed to come out of it? I mean,
well, if
you know,
we live in a windy city,
yeah, true.
that's where the seeds come from. They get
Yeah.
spread through that.
If you hydro seed, then the weeds will attach to that as well.
All those clover things I could imagine sprouting up from in between or.
Yeah. Yeah. So maintenance on the bags. Maintenance on the bags would involve replacing dead plants if there are such. We have to install these irrigation things to keep it moist.
We have to do that with the gabion as well. And we're gonna have to
Behind the gabion, yeah. You know, just planting. Most of the work is going to be the initial planting, and then just doing maintenance of replacing plants that didn't make it, because there's always going to be some, right? Yeah, I mean, that's it. And pulling, I guess, if there are weeds, pulling the weeds. It's the same as what we're doing now, but in a wall system that's holding back the hill from sliding. So, and if a car hits these, you can actually replace the bag. It's like a Lego system. There will be enough structure to be able to put a new bag in or sew up a bag that's there. That's what we were told, because that was a question that they asked the
cheaper
guy.
to maintain. Yeah,
they are cheaper to repair. So
They said you can't pull the bag out, but what you can do is you can patch them up.
well, if they're really bad, you can pull them out.
Yeah, but then you have to pull them from the top because you can't pull one out from the middle.
Unless it's, yes, I understand. Right.
And is the irrigation going to be like a rubber standard sort of drip system? Because that would be probably quite a bit of maintenance, because the animals chew through the rubber hoses and things.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue regardless of which choice we choose. But you're right, that's something to watch. I don't know what we're going to ultimately decide, because we're going to talk with an irrigation specialist to, you know, figure out what the best idea is. These hard hard plastic tubes are more difficult for rodents to chew through. Those foam drip tubes, I have found that they will dry out and then become dysfunctional. So probably the hard plastic, which I think is what this is, the 1-inch hard plastic, is probably what we're going to do for our water line. But again, we're going to have to consult with the specialist about it. So.
and Scott probably knows who's our, you know, who's the landscape architect working with us on it.
Right.
And you said the cost for the irrigation system was not quoted in those numbers?
No,
No.
not.
And that would
that's
be
a separate grant that
right.
we're
Oh,
applying.
okay.
Right.
Looking for that page that has the cost analysis. Here it is. Okay.
So, and Lila, do we know, do we know how much, you said you've put in a drip irrigation system yourself?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I've done that.
So is that something, like, I don't imagine that it would be that expensive for us to do. I mean, if we're doing the labor,
Yeah.
and then the cost of it, you know, we can probably get an idea from Scott, how much that is.
You can buy 100 feet of that hose and just, you know, tack it in with the with those metal loops. It's not super complicated. It really isn't. And if we could find a volunteer who's an irrigation specialist who's willing to just sort of advise us, I do think it's something we can do ourselves to cut down on costs.
Yeah.
So
Angie from the other project would help us. She said she could help with irrigation.
Oh, there you go. We met some pretty amazing people on our journey, and Angie is one of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop the share, give you guys a chance to see each other's faces. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to send out a survey as a follow-up, give you some time to sort of percolate on these ideas and think about what you want and what you'd like. We're going to put this presentation on the website so you can watch it again if you want to. And just, you know, this is a community group and you guys are the community. So we want to work together with everybody. I know that there's, in any group of people, there's going to be a difference in aesthetics. And, you know, what we want to do more than anything is make a decision that makes everybody happy. And I just want to put out there and highlight again, if I can find the slide, the really nice render that Marina added today to the presentation of what about a synthesis of Gabion and Flex MSC. You know, that's a possibility. It would also sort of be experimental. Like, are we being crazy thinking that somebody's going to graffiti this, or, you know, how real is that? I think, you know, we would find out.
Yeah, but I'm also look at bottom line. You know, my thing is, I don't want to go through a third cycle grant. I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do it. And, you know, this is one more, it's a lot of work, you guys. And I don't know if you understand everything that we put into this to get this far, but, you know, it's the expense. And that's what I look at is, can we get the overall aesthetic of what we want and get one more grant cycle and get it done? So that's where I stand on this.
Yeah, you guys have done a ton of work. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presenter, Lila.
Yeah. I believe that, yeah, I'm home now, thankfully. And I'm glad that we're just, and I also appreciate you getting the input and not just pulling the trigger on either or decision. The hybrid idea is a nice idea, but again, what are we getting into? And right now we don't know how far we're getting at this point with the amount of money we have that we can start with. It's totally vague about how far what we're building is going to be built. And I would rather we go with a less expensive to maintain Flex up to the point where the rock outcropping, which is right in front of my window, is going to be there regardless of which way we go.
Right.
And that is going to I don't keep digging a drain ditch. We're not going to want to chew through this thing.
Well, you're cutting out, Paul.
I don't know if there's a single gopher.
Yeah, it's an issue, and we're going to have to ask that question of the company that makes these bags. Like, what's the realistic gopher? You know, that's a seriously good question. So,
and they have, you know, there are enough pictures of existing implementations of the bags that some of those entities should be able to respond, not just what the manufacturer says, but what's the real life experience with the bags over time, because some of those walls, you know, obviously have been there for quite a while.
yeah, I know that when I drove through Hoover Dam, probably like maybe 5-6 years ago, they're using these bags or a technology that's similar in that area along the side of the freeway. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting, because they were in the process of installing them. So they were the varying stages of the bags, both uncovered and covered in plants. So, we would actually, that is something on our agenda. We really do want to talk to somebody independently of the manufacturer and get the real story on how well they do. It's a really good idea. And, that's something we want to pursue. So, and the gopher question is a really good one. So,
I think the Gabion had a 70-year life, or was that what was the lifespan of these two options?
75 for the bags. The Gabion, is there a life expectancy? I mean,
no, I'm going to look it up real quick.
You said 30 for the bags?
75 for the bags, and we're looking up lifespan of Gabion ball.
I mean, I think a lifespan urban versus a lifespan rural, I mean, I mean, like, I mean, that's gonna be a big,
Yeah,
range.
the range is anywhere from 10 years to 75 years, depending on the install environment. So, that's what they're talking about.
10 doesn't sound very good.
Well, and
But,
about
let me-
4 months, about 6 months to tag.
Let me
Yeah.
contrast the bag. If we can't get the plants to grow over the bag, they degrade between 5 to 10 years. If we can't get them planted. Now, if we can get them planted over, then they can last 75 years and it's no problem.
Well, planted and seeded. I mean, part of the
Yeah.
process is seeding it.
They have to be green. Plants need to be thriving in them in order for them to last that 75 years. So.
On the part of 101 that isn't quite finished yet, north of Novato and south of Petaluma, they used a spray and it was green.
Mhm.
That's hydro spray, yeah.
They used the hydro spray, and there are places where they've used the bags
Yeah.
on 101 instead of a retaining wall. And
Right.
I don't want to feel like I'm facing a freeway on the other side when it's a beautiful landscaping right now with lots of plants. Of course, it's a great time of year because it gets so green.
Right.
But I'm concerned that if we have these two choices, what's to say that the first choice is going to last any longer, and definitely its ability to get damaged is not going to be mitigated by a curb.
The first choice, which is the first choice?
Gabion.
Oh,
The second choice is the Flex.
right.
And and there doesn't seem to be any other choices being presented. And of course, there's a cat that just decided to go right in. There you go. There, that's Mocha.
Hi, Mocha. Hey, Mocha.
There she goes. She's back to her dinner now. She just wanted to say hello to everybody. But anyway, what's our next step here? Because I think we've accomplished something in the last over an hour. I got home.
Yeah. So
Our next
So
step
our-
is to
from our perspective, we're going to post this presentation on the website and send out a link to everybody. And then we're also going to send, in about a week, we're going to send out a survey. So we want you guys to be thinking about this. And we want to make a decision about which method to go through. So you'll be able to watch the presentation again and make a decision, and it'll be an anonymous, I don't know. I mean, should we do an anonymous survey? I mean, does anybody care? I mean,
No.
it might be better to not be anonymous so we can talk, right?
because if you don't get your way, we're going to need to talk it out.
Well, no,
I'm
because
kidding.
here's the
I'm
thing.
just kidding, Lila.
Here's how I feel about it. We are a community. We are friends. We live together on this street. We're going to be
Right.
looking at this street together for however long we live here. I don't want us to not be friends because we can't decide on the same aesthetics. People have different aesthetics. It's just the way it is. And so we're dealing with a situation where we have X amount of money and we can get this far with this option and this far with this option. And we need your help making this decision because we do not feel that it's something that we want to, as Paul said, push the trigger on without community input. So in a week, we'll send you a survey and we ask for your input, please.
Quick question. I understood there was some sort of deadline in terms of you're telling them, okay, we're doing X, fund it.
I would
Yes.
say I don't know about the
But-
week, Lila, because there's no there's no urgency, but
They
we
wanted
hesitate.
to pull the
They
trigger
wanted us to pull the trigger
last week, 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
they want us to
I
pull the
know,
trigger.
but we don't want to be pressure sold.
Yeah.
So that's why I think taking a week for the neighbors
Ooh.
and people who might want to watch the presentation and weigh in. I think it's an okay thing for us to take a week. The reason that we have a timing pressure is that the city runs very slowly. And one of the next steps is getting approval from the city. And we're anticipating it taking 4 months to get approval from DPW for us to proceed with this project. And that's what Scott from Terrain Studios pointed out, that they work very slow. So the deadline is that if we actually want to start construction in May, we need to make this decision and get it approved by DPW ASAP. But again, you know, this is a big decision. This is $150,000, and I'm not even going to be able to express to you how many tens of hours, maybe even hundreds of hours that we have invested in this so far in the past 3 years of doing this. So I think it's okay to spend a week to make this decision and to give people the space to be able to really analyze it and come to a decision. And then ultimately, I guess it'll come down to a vote, right? I mean, is that why we're doing the survey?
Right.
So
I'm just of a mind that less is more. The further we can get with the money, the less we bury ourselves behind, an unexpected expense or an overrun. And if one thing makes us dig further into the hill, oh my God, that's rock. That's
my worry is like, what Pandora's boxes are we going to find if we have to excavate? You know, we already know that the water pipes for the entire upper Haro come through that median. So, I mean, it's already, complicated.
This block was the wild, wild west. I mean, I got lost here before I even moved here, because on the 1200 block, the Galliani family lived there, and they were all in the music business. I mean, nearly all of them. But
right.
the house is still there. The Gallianis are not there anymore. But this was a dirt road. And
they just died. The last one just died.
Which one?
Well, this is a sidetrack. I'm sorry. We'll talk offline.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll get really well. Lynn Galliani, one of the, I think it's Lynn, but one of the sisters or Melanie runs one of the cluster of radio. She's the general manager of Wine Country Radio. So one of the sisters.
We're still sidetracking.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to put a better thing than that they're all dead. The last one just died on it. So at any rate, I really appreciate this, and I don't know what mechanism you want to use, vote, and I don't know how everybody else feels about it, and it seems like the committee itself is kind of divided up on which way to go, and are we all good with living with the majority, including those who didn't feel they had the time or the inclination to join us on the call?
Well, we're going to send it a notification about the recording out, and so people can listen to the recording if they were not able to join.
Okay, great.
And we'll post a link to the survey on the website with the video as well. And we'll leave the survey open for a week. How's that? So people can fill it out now or next, on the last day.
I have a couple of last questions.
Good.
Is my brain going to work? I guess in terms of the budget, let's say the majority vote for the Gabion option. Are we pretty sure that the second grant, one, that we'll get the second grant, and two, that the second grant would cover all the cost? And then, like, related question, what happens if something unforeseen happens during the construction and suddenly there's additional cost? Do we have any plan for what we might do to pay?
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, there's no backup plan. I mean, if we find out that there's additional costs, they'd have to stop. They're just going to make it shorter. When you ask about phase 2, we're confident we're going to get another grant. We're confident we'll probably get another grant for $150,000. The problem is in that second grant, by being over $88,000, it's only going to finish up shoring up the lower part and we're not going to get the upper part where it's eroding as well,
Right.
we'll probably not be able to complete that with Gabion. And I personally will not participate in trying to get a third grant. I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth. So that's my input.
I want to answer that also, Aaron, by, thank you, David, by looking at this slide that I shared again. The grant has a construction budget limit of $101,000.
Oh.
So we can only devote 101,000 of the 150,000 to construction. So if we're in the red, let's assume, let's hold our breath and whistle in the dark and assume that it's not going to be more expensive than 88,000 in the red. That pretty much eats up our entire construction budget for the second grant. Does that make sense? Am I being clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
How much did we spend already?
God, that's a good question. I think on the surveys, somewhere in the area, I think it cost some ridiculous amount. Surveys are horrible.
I think it's close to $50,000.
Yeah, and keep in mind that it's $150,000 grant, but we, the community, organization, have to come up with a 40% match. So, which we're doing pretty well, thanks to some people here in this screen.
Well, and it's
we're
community
going to
match.
meet
It's
the
also,
match.
right. The match is also volunteer hours.
Yeah.
When you guys come out
plant
and help
propagation.
us, right? When you guys come out and help us on the street, that is community hours, which it helps towards our paying the grant back.
It helps us a lot for community participation. So my point is that if we have to do a second grant, which we'll have to do a second grant, we're going to have to match 40% of that 150,000 again. Is it right? Is it 40%?
I thought it was 25%.
25%. It's $40,000 is what we're supposed to match for this project. That's right. So,
and then who knows, we might, after speaking with Scott, if we go with the lesser expensive, we might not have to apply for 150,000 for the second one. We might be able to complete the bottom portion and shore up the work that we do for less than 150,000. We don't know that.
Yeah, or we could just do the whole project for another 150 and then be done. And then play and plant on the hillside.
So what I'm saying is, to finish up, do the bottom portion. We don't know what the second phase is going to cost because we've already paid for $30,000 in surveys. We don't have to get another survey.
That's
so we
true.
might save $30,000 there and only need $120,000 grant. So,
Right.
it always, it's sort of, we're working with something that's kind of in motion. It's a moving target, and, we'll get there when we get there.
It's a dynamic situation.
Yes.
And if we were to get the streets approved through this alternative method of just using that association of streets, if the streets get approved, does that mean the city will fix the ramp and they'll have to or will they do anything?
Well, have you driven anywhere in the city? We don't know.
Could I just interject something right now on that? It's unlikely that anything would be done while I'm still with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and Paul's only 45, so that's saying a lot.
Yeah, well, it would take. Yeah, well, okay, but I know that since I'm part of the city bureaucracy in my own way, because I'm on the bicycle advisory committee, and I have a lot of knowledge of the inner workings. I mean, I think that San Francisco is probably the most inefficient of any major city in America when it comes to spending the money, and really good at spending the money. And people have like great ideas that cost a lot of money, and then they run out of money for it. If you understood what happened with the Better Market Street idea and how ridiculous that got, and then the idea that we're going to let Muni dig up the street. Well, let's look at how well it went with Van Ness and how many years the subway,
Oh
the
my
central
God.
subway's taken to get where it is. And
Yeah.
and then you have to walk the full length from the station that serves Moscone Center to Market Street, it underground in a tunnel. And tell me who's going to maintain that tunnel and who's going to hang out in there. Any hands up?
Bill?
I'm gonna have to go. I'm sorry, but I need to get dinner and I've got another commitment. So
Okay,
thank
I
you
just want to
all.
put a capper on that. The keeping your eye on the ball, getting the street accepted means that we as owners on the property don't have to pay to
Right.
pave the street. That's why we want to still do that.
Absolutely.
So, Bill, thank you
Oh,
so
yeah,
much for your
Jason.
participation.
Good. Thank you.
And this
Bye,
is probably
everybody.
a
Thank you
good time
all.
for us all
Thank
to
you,
leave.
Bill. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Paul. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate everybody's involvement. I want to thank my teammates for the incredible work that they did on the presentation. I'm really grateful for the last minute work you did, Marina, adding those slides. That was really appreciated, and sending me information to add to it. Everybody, I really appreciate it. So.
Well, to you, Lila.